All
Okay,
right.
and we are live. So,
Awesome.
welcome to another episode of Cyber Bytes, the podcast. Today I'm joined by Eran Barak, who is the co-founder and the CEO over at Mind. Eran, great to have you on. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good, Stefan. Thank you for having me today. Happy to be here with you.
You're welcome. We're just discussing before, you're in Seattle at the moment, right?
Correct. I'm based out of Seattle. Right.
Yes, very nice. And like the UK, it's a bit cold,
Yeah, it's a bit
unfortunately.
chilly. Luckily sunny here today, but you're right. Kind of the same weather as you.
That's it. Well, look, the way I like to start the podcast, Iran, is rewind the clock. So tell the audience who are you and what is the problem that mind solves?
Yeah. So my name is Eran Barak. As you said before, I am the co-founder and CEO here at Mine. And our main mission is basically to reimagine DLP. And what we do, our main goal is to stop data leaks. This is why we founded Mind, myself and my other two co-founders. We have the global team, both in Israel, where is our R&D, and here in the US, where is our go-to market.
Mm,
And yeah, we work really hard to secure our customers' sensitive data. And this
mm,
is what we're passionate about. And of course, I can elaborate more on what we do and how we do and what we got into this space.
love it. Let's start on your background. So, like many from Israel, I'm correct in saying, right, is the Israeli military to begin, right? Can you talk us through how did you fall into, I guess, cyber and what's your journey? It's quite obvious how you got into cyber from the Israeli military, right?
Yeah.
But what's the journey?
Yeah, so I started my security career, I would say 20 plus years ago. I used to say I'm in cyber as much as cyber exists, if you will. When I used to serve, I was in the intelligence corps back in the Israeli Defense Force. This was where cyber was not exist as a term. We called it back then like information warfare, with obviously different technology and stuff. And this is where I first got introduced to this space.
Mm,
And I was very fascinated about it. And then after 5 years in the intelligence corps, I got my engineering degree and then got back to a public company to basically establish their cyber division with another few folks. It was a defense contractor, and this is how I went back to cyber. It was already 2010, and we started this basically kind of a startup in a big public company, which was very cool because you have all the funds. You don't need to deal with all investments and all this fun stuff that we have as an entrepreneur, but you still get the entrepreneur experience, if you will. And there I was in charge of one out of three products that really took off, fortunately. And basically, this was a great school for me
mm,
on the commercial side and how to build a business. And there I met two partners, which over the years became my co-founders for a company called Hexadite that we founded back in 2014. Hexadite, if you're not familiar with, was the pioneering in the automated incident response space back in 2014. Later on, more and more companies started to pop up, which was really cool to see. It was an area where we really develop a product where you can really save analyst time and really streamline the entire remediation process. Our main goal was focusing on the endpoint, and we basically took alerts from any detection sources and ran these automatic investigations. And because we were focusing on the endpoint, at the same time Microsoft started to develop their EDR solution, which is the endpoint solution for security. And they wanted to double down on that, and they decided that they missed the auto IR piece. And they wanted to acquire a company in this space. They looked in many companies, and they found Hexadite as the best fit. And then I basically landed here in Seattle, where I'm now
Mm,
from the acquisition back in end of 2017. I would say that, part of this experience at Hexadite, we basically raised both seed and Series A round, had really great ventures, backed us up. I moved from Tel Aviv, where we opened our R&D first, to Boston.
mm,
By the way, every time I remember it was back in 2016, where the Bay Area was kind of booming and people were like, why you move to Boston? Like everything is in the Bay Area.
mm.
And I was like, listen, if you have an R&D in Israel, being in Boston is a huge advantage because you can really communicate better. I know now I'm in Seattle, so it's a bit different and maybe contradict what my philosophy is. It basically just enforced me to, or forced me, sorry, it's forced me to walk maybe crazy times now, Boston. But yeah, and I moved to Boston. I hired all our go-to-market, our VP
Mm,
marketing, VP sales, built an entire team. In the peak, we were like 40 employees or so at Hexadite. And
nice.
then when the acquisition done, I moved to Seattle.
Awesome.
Yeah, and basically in Seattle, I was at Microsoft. I reported to a guy called Rob Lefferts, who is today is the CVP for all the M365 security. And it was really great experience at Microsoft to see just a big giant company moving and delivering on security, which was really fun. The 4 years at Microsoft, in fact, I stayed even more than I needed. But yeah, it was a good experience there as well. Founded some great programs at Microsoft myself and another few folks, and then I decided to go back to be entrepreneur, where I feel it's my sweet spot and where I feel most comfortable, and
Yeah,
found it.
love it. There's so much I want to ask and discuss within this. I guess
Yeah,
the first
sorry, yeah,
because there's
no
so much good
problem.
stuff. There's so much good
Yeah.
stuff. I guess the first thing is, so you founded your first company and had a great, sounds like a great exit at Microsoft, and then stayed on with Microsoft. When you started Mind, is there something you learned particularly in there? Is there one or two key learnings that you can share from that that you've taken on with you to Mind?
Yeah, so it's a question I get oftentimes about what are your lesson learned from
Mm,
Hexadite and Microsoft that you brought to mind, and there are many of them. But one thing I would say that was really resonated with me back at Hexadite, that I saw it only post our Series A, when we already had the VP marketing in place and established our marketing team, is that the branding is very important, and to make sure you basically surface what you do in a very clear and coherent way, and you stand out of the noise. Especially these days, we know cybersecurity is so overwhelmed, and even me as entrepreneur and a security practitioner and investor, sometimes I see companies in the space and I'm like, what is the difference now between these two, three, five, seven companies, right? There's so much overlap. And this is what we did here at Mind from day one. And you can look at our website and all our marketing materials and everything related to the brand. We really invested a lot of resources on that to stand out. And when we see it now, it's paid off. And we get a lot of compliment. People understand what we are doing, and this is one of my main lesson learned. The second one is basically to be very customer focused, and we did it at Hexadite. But again, Hexadite was my first entrepreneur gig, I would say, as a founder. But here, because I'm now already in the US, we were making sure that what we develop is really what customers need, and we actually develop on some customers environment, like big customers, even thousands of employees, to make sure we really develop on real data and real use cases. And
hmm
this was a game changer, because then the time to market is really fast, and you also reduce the amount of mistakes you're going to do. I always say in startups, in order to succeed, is the ones who succeed is the one who makes the less mistakes over the course of
Mm,
the company's life cycle.
yeah, great. They're super interesting learnings. And then why mind then? So you had the time at Microsoft after.
Yeah.
What was it about the market that you were saying, hey, do you know what? I need to, or we need to go and build mind in the data security
Yeah.
space?
Yeah, that's a good question. When we founded Mine a couple of years ago, we basically, we look back at the cyber space, and there were so many companies in so many different spaces. But when I look back at my experience at Hexadite, where we, as I mentioned, you investigated these alerts coming from detection sources. When I look back, I saw that about 50% of the alerts were coming from DLP tools, endpoint DLP tools. And then if I dig even more and I looked and I saw that above these 50% of these alerts, like more than 50% of those alerts were false positive. And this was very interesting data because then I understood a few things. First, I understood why DLP are not functioning as DLP. There is no P. P is for prevention because they are making so much noise. So customers prefer to shut the prevention down and just put it as a detection tool. And second, I realized how much time and resources are basically wasting when you chase these false positives, this noise. And so this was kind of one insight that I'm like, okay, this is an interesting space, the DLP. And
Mm,
obviously, as we all know, DLP it's been there like 20 plus years, no disruption. People stayed away from that. It's more compliant based. So it was
mm,
kind of okay, let's double check it again. And then with my experience at Microsoft, I founded the program at Microsoft with another guy called MISA, which is the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association, which I highly encourage any startup to be part of this program. And I used to work very closely with many ISVs. And in particular, one of the team that I worked closely inside Microsoft was MIP, which is the Microsoft Information Protection, which became Purview, which is basically the data security DLP tool. And one thing I saw that Microsoft really did great is combining all this to one platform. So if you think about it today, in order to protect where you have your sensitive data today in your organization, you have it obviously in SaaS apps, you have it on your endpoint, you have it sometimes on on-prem file shares, even today. Even if people say everyone is moving to the cloud, we
mm,
still see a lot of footprint of on-prem file shares. And last but not least is email. And Microsoft did a really good job combining it to one platform where you have one classification engine, one policy engine. But this is only applied for the Microsoft stack. Now, I don't want to go and talk, on the Microsoft Purview product, but I can tell you firsthand that first, we have many customers using this product coming to us for many reasons. And second is that if you think about it, no company is just the Microsoft stack. You still have Box and you still have Dropbox and you still have, you have imagine any SaaS apps that you use that can have sensitive data and you need to protect it. And this data is moving between OneDrive, SharePoint to these apps. And then your endpoint is not just Windows, it's also Mac. And this is where we were like, okay, so I think what needed here is a disruption in the DLP space. You need one platform, as we call it, one platform to rule them all, and where you combine all this data into one platform. So imagine once you light up the Mind platform, you basically see all the data flowing into your one inventory, into one dashboard, into one UI. And basically, you can run all your policies, you can configure all your policies across these different
mm.
technologies. And
Yeah.
this is big win for our customers because they don't want to manage 3, 4 different DLP tools that are not connected between them. And this is the reality today. And this is
Mm.
what we are doing here at Mind. And of course I can talk about it more and more, but there are many other stuff that is built into the platform to make it
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, it's interesting because I hear it every day in the industry, the platform approach, right? And having that one unified like user interface rather than using three or four different tools. So, um, it's interesting that you guys do that, and clearly the customers that you have are loving you do that as well.
Yeah, no, 1%. And I can tell you that, one of the things that, talking about DLP and why DLP, and you haven't seen again too many companies or too many startups going to this space is because it's not an easy space. The reason being is that, and I say it also from investor point of view as well, is that if you think about cybersecurity, and this is my philosophy, there are not many areas where you really have IP.
Mm,
And the reason being is the nature of the tech. I mean, it's mostly API based, and it's all comes down to who execute better and who present it in a very, in a much nicer way,
mm,
and that is making the customer more efficient and obviously more secure.
yeah.
But when you think about DLP, the fundamental things about DLP is the classification. And until recently, classification has been done only regex based. So just I do like that dumb rules where you basically classify data.
Hmm.
But these days, because of the use of LLMs and AI, and this is where I personally saw the shift, you really can digest more data, add more context, be more precise, be more dynamic. Data is a very dynamic thing if you think about it, which again, the traditional DLP tools do not look at that way.
Mm,
If you think about, let's say, Microsoft again as a public company, right? If you look, let's say they have the earnings, quarterly earnings. The day before the earnings, the financial data is very sensitive. The day after is no more sensitive. So how
mm,
you basically adjust to these kind of scenarios? And we invested here at Mind years of engineers on our classification engine. And in fact, this is why we were in stealth for so long. And we just came out of stealth 3 months ago, and because we really built it in a
mm.
very smart way that again today paid off by our customers, as you mentioned.
Yeah, very cool. And we'll discuss more on Mind in a second. What I'm keen to just stay on is so alongside being an entrepreneur, you're also an investor, right? Which is interesting. But how did you kind of fall into doing some like, is it just angel investments as well, by the way, at the moment?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
mostly angel investments. When Hexadite was acquired, one of my thinking was, okay, now I want to give back to the community.
Mm,
And obviously, cyber is something that I'm very passionate about, and I wanted to see how I can give back. And the best way for me to give back was investing back some of the money in new and up and coming startups. And this is how I started. And of course,
mm,
part of the network and part of the VCs that invested at Hexadite introduced me to potential founders. And this is what make me excited, to see something starting from scratch, either is by myself or by other entrepreneurs, and grow it to a big companies. And I got lucky, and that few entrepreneurs gave me the chance to invest in them and made successful companies. And yeah, I like it. I have to be honest, I do it less now with Mind. I mean, it's another philosophy I have. You see many entrepreneurs invest and manage companies at the same time. I have to be honest with you. I think as an entrepreneur, you really need to be, especially if you run a company, you really need to be focused on the company. And if you
mm.
invest, if you want to give added value, it's really hard while you're running a company at the same time. And also sometimes you get to a conflict, imagine of
Yeah,
hiring and so on and so forth.
of course.
So yeah, so this is how I first started, and my journey around that. Yeah,
Yeah,
which
very cool.
I do it more as a hobby.
No, it's very cool. And you mentioned philosophy. So it sounds like you've got from your first company and taking to Mind, you've got some philosophies that were allowing you to be successful. One was you obviously had the location in Boston, allowing that communication to be streamlined. You then talked about like dedication, right, to keep, I guess, your eyes on the prize and being committed to mind. Is there any other philosophies that you live by that have allowed you to be successful?
Yeah, I think we're as an entrepreneur and mainly in cybersecurity again because it is just a overwhelmed space with so much noise is where you need to be focused is go to market. And this is another area where, I give you an example. Back at Hexadite, of course, we didn't raise the same amount of money, but we brought in a VP marketing just when we raised our Series A round. Whereas here at Mind, VP of marketing was our first hire here in the US. And the reason being is that even if you are still in stealth, which is hard to bring someone, by the way, when you are still in stealth, because marketing is all about being out there, right?
Mm,
But it really helps to shape the messaging and stands out again down the road. So if you do it from day one or literally from the beginning and
mm,
get the VP marketing being involved in customer calls, in development of the product, he really understands and shape himself or herself the messaging. So this was a
mm,
key, the go-to-market slash marketing and then sales,
mm.
and doing it from day one like you have a product, right?
Yeah,
Obviously, are transparent you with the customers, you understand their needs, and you promise to deliver quickly. And this is what we
mm,
focus on. And again, the main key and what drives us here at Mind is customer obsession. And we make sure that every requirement that we have from a customer is being delivered as quickly as possible, obviously, if it's aligned with our roadmap.
mhm. Yeah. I love that because it's interesting. A lot of the companies we help with recruitment, typically their first hire is sales rather than marketing. So I like the idea that you've gone marketing first because they're so closely aligned anyway, and that whole messaging piece is really important to get right. Um, so it's interesting you do marketing and then sales.
Yeah, that's interesting that you hire sales first, and I, by the way, I understand that, but if you think about it from process perspective, sales need to pitch something, and the way you pitch or she is based on your messaging and your marketing collateral.
Yeah.
So you can have the sales successful without having the marketing, the marketing in place. I would say the marketing team. So yeah, this was what I learned myself.
Mm,
And by the way, you need to know where to, and this is not science. This is more, it's more art. When to plug both marketing and sales to the company and what are the right time. It's
mm,
more instincts, I would say, rather than to say, okay, I achieved this milestone. Let's put now the VP
yeah.
sales.
Yeah.
And honestly, as a founder and especially as a CEO, you always sell and you need to be the one who sells at the beginning. And even if you have repeats, you are still selling, right? So this is a job that I do on daily basis myself, and I like it
Yeah.
also.
Yeah. Love it. And how did you find how you ran two startups and onto my well, second one is Mind. How did you find that fundraising journey out of interest? Was there any learnings there from first time and now doing it again? Out of interest, do you have any of the same investors that stayed with you
Yeah.
from?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I have a lot to say about that because it's a great different times that I experienced myself.
Mm,
So, back at Hexadite, it was again kind of our first gig as an entrepreneur. Of course, I told you I did it in a public company, which was a good school for me. But then you need to go and raise the money yourself, right? There is no
mm,
parent company on top that just throw money on you. So yeah, the comparison I would say is, first of all, if you think about it, the crazy times was 21, 22 in terms of the funding. And this is honestly, I was still at Microsoft when this craziness started. I was about to end my time at Microsoft, but I didn't understand. I'm a number guy, and I didn't understand how all this makes sense. I think,
mm,
fast forward, we understand now that many of these investments were not the best investments, unfortunately, for many, many VCs. But with mine, we got it just at the peak of the craziness, and basically This were where it was not complex to raise money. And we got lucky where we were able to secure a big seed round, $11 million seed round to basically build our vision, which is quite big vision when you think about DLP. So this was kind of more smooth process. And this also enabled us that, in fact, I didn't even have a investor deck.
Oh, wow.
So this was the main difference, I would say, between Hexadite to here. And now, going forward that we are here and, we'll get more funding is all about execution,
Mm,
right? It's all about,
yeah.
showing ARR, showing customer traction, and basically showing that you have a good team in place that is capable to execute on all your vision. And this is where we are now here at.
Yeah. Love it. I love that you didn't even have a deck, right? It's the trust is
Yeah,
somewhat there.
exactly. Exactly. It's huge difference. I mean, in fact, it saves you so much time also because again,
Yeah.
it let you focus and on what one, as we say it, mind what matters. It lets you focus on what matters.
Yeah.
And by the way, I do think, putting my investor hat, I still believe that, if you go to as an investor, doesn't matter if you're an angel investor or a VC, when you go into a seed/Series A stage company, it's more instincts rather than fundamental. Meaning that, if because I can show you $1 million ARR, but this would be based on 2, 3 customers. So then the
Mm,
question would be, okay, why 2, 3 customers? I want to see 10 customers. But then I can show you 10 customers with $500,000 ARR. Then you would ask, okay, why 500,000? Why not 1 million, right? So for me, and I say it all the time, and to many friends of mine who also run VCs, I'm like, and this is how I invest myself when I was more focusing on investment, is that if I see a good team, and the team is not just the founders, by the way, is because as a founder, what I judge myself, if you are able to recruit good folks
mm,
to your team, from the go-to-market to R&D, and so on, is that if you have a good team and you have a good domain that you believe this is the right domain for disruption, then I think you should put the money there,
yeah.
and let's look about just the numbers, right? I
Yeah.
mean, again, the numbers you can tweak in any way. So this
Yeah.
is, but obviously, as you grow the company and you go to Series B and Series C, numbers are very important. As I mentioned in the beginning, the craziness that happened in 21 and 22, and where I saw companies selling, $4 or $5 million ARR and valuated in $1 billion unicorn.
Mm,
Basically, this didn't make sense. It
it's
was
crazy.
basically you would tell me that Hexadite was a unicorn. Yeah. So
Crazy
yeah,
times, weren't they? I
yeah.
reviewed some hiring data recently. I can't remember the exact stats, but it was looking at companies funded in 21 versus companies that were funded in 23 and 24. And if you looked at the hiring figures in 21, it was essentially just a steady decline because those who got funding, unfortunately, it didn't kind of mean that much at the time as everyone was getting funding versus those in 23 and 24 in cyber, they had slowly and steadily like a growth curve for hiring. So it's quite
Yeah.
interesting to see, and it makes sense, right?
Right. Right. Right.
But anyway, let's finish on minds because there's a load of good stuff here as well. So like if folks don't, you've obviously given a quick description, but if they don't know who you are, like talk to us about where you're at as a business. Recently came out of stealth, which is super exciting. Let's start there.
Mine basically puts data loss prevention programs on autopilot, and our main mission is to stop data leaks across the enterprise. So we have one platform, as I said before, one platform to rule them all. We protect sensitive data across SaaS apps, across endpoint, across on-prem file shares and email. And the way we do it is kind of a different approach. We do it both proactively and in motion and use. So we protect both data at rest and in motion, which basically enable you as an organization to reduce the data risks already proactively. So once we connect to all these data sources, we start scanning the data, we classify it, we apply these policies that you have, and basically run that on this data and show you where you have already data risks and mitigate them for you. We can do it, in a fully automated mode or semi-automated mode, work directly with the end user. And this is what we're passionate about here at Mind, and protecting this sensitive data you have across your entire enterprise. And one of the things also that is important to mention, that when I talk about SaaS Hub, it's also about Gen AI apps, which is the main driver here also. One of the big revolution that we see the past years is everything about AI, and
Mm.
this AI generates a lot of data, some of it sensitive data, and this is where mine really shine in terms of protecting all this data. So yeah, that's about us. I would say in terms of customers, again, the beauty when it comes to data loss prevention, any company wants to protect its data. And we have customers for few hundred employees all the way to tens thousands of employees, which have the same mission to protect the more sensitive data.
I love it. Yeah, and what does the future hold for you guys? What's the on the horizon this year? Um, and maybe into next year if that.
Yeah, we keep growing. As you guys can see, we have open positions to hire more folks in both in Israel and here in the US. We have a crazy demand, so we want to make sure we can keep up. So we have this position to fill in and grow the team both in Israel and here in the US. Working very, very close with the channel, the partners. Basically, I personally, you asked me before about, my lesson learned. One thing when it comes to go to market, I always say, you sell direct, but the way to go is working with the channel, with the
Mm.
partners. And this is a force multiplier. So, we started doing it here at Mind from day one, almost, to be honest
Mm.
with you, really, really early stage. And so also want to scale this part and, basically grow our customer base, keep protecting our current customers, and deliver more and more features that makes them more secure, more efficient, and obviously comply, because it's the main things also when it comes to data.
Yeah, love it. Exciting year for you guys ahead then. And I hear that a lot. Channels that multiply, right? I think I hear controversial things, but having that channel play versus direct, well, having direct and channel, that's how you can start to scale and elevate, right? Versus just solely direct.
Completely agree. And I saw it live back at Hexadite. We're a partnership with HPE, and
Mm.
basically HPE ArcSight in particular, and their guys really sold Hexadite. Hexadite was on their quota. So when I
Oh
saw
wow.
this, yeah, so this is what you want. You
Yeah.
want to make sure if you do these partners that they get compensated a lot, especially at the beginning on selling your product.
Mm.
And this is what we all passionate about here at Mind. And even deals that we can do it direct here at Mind, we bring partners to the table. And we don't, we look more long term rather than short term.
Was gonna say, because I think a lot of people look at that financial hit, right? But if you
Correct.
actually look at the bigger picture, hang on a minute, how much business is this going to bring us in the long term?
Correct. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You need to look on the bigger picture and not just on this specific deal, because okay, you might get a hit of few
Mm.
points on this deal, but you get many more deals down the road. And,
Yeah.
and this is what you want. And also, last but not least, I would say when it comes to the channel and partner, if you think about it, as a startup, you have, finity amount of money that you can hire a sales team, right? You don't have unlimited resources.
Yeah.
But if you start working with channel, you can have maybe one or two person manage the channel, and suddenly you have tens or hundreds of people selling your product on
Mm.
top of your direct sales team. So this is really cool to see when you build the sales machine.
Yeah, it's a good way of thinking about it. Well, look, to wrap this up, Erin, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I've loved, and sure the audience have, learning more about your journey, the success you had in your first startup, and what you guys are building at Mind. Before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you want to get across or mention?
No, thank you so much again for having me today. I think, it was a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for all the question. And, every time, I always say you don't understand how much you learn,
Mm.
and across your journey until you start thinking about that. And then like, oh, wow, this is how much I learned, from what I've done. So I like this kind of conversation. So thanks again for the opportunity and, you know, having me here today.
No, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure. Well, we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, absolutely, Stefan. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Eran.
Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed today's show, please like and share with your friends and colleagues, as this is really important for the show's reach. If you'd like to be our next guest or are interested in Aspiron Search's staffing solutions, please get in touch directly with me or reach out to us via our website www.aspironsearch.com.